A penny saved is a penny
Earned.
That is correct. Let's dive in and talk about Benjamin Franklin on today's podcast. Welcome back to the Banking Bros podcast and show. I am co-host 1, Jay Do.
And I am Jono, which is co-host number 2.
We're going to walk you through a few things regarding one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. Recently, I read a book called Benjamin Franklin's Last Bet by Michael Meyer. Now, how many Michael Myers are there?
I know there's a few in a couple movies that are
so
pretty
many.
famous.
But that really got me thinking. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about what this founding father did that you probably have never heard about that made a very big impact on his community 200 years later. Jonah, before we get into it, we're going to go to Poor Richard's Almanac. You remember what that is?
I don't, but I've heard about it before.
So
maybe it records all of the sports. Is it sports? Is Poor Richard sports? Records all the sports?
No,
winnings?
that's Back to the Future. That one recorded sports.
Yeah.
Okay,
that was good, though.
It was, though. Took us into the future, 2015, which was 10 years ago.
Yep.
Wild. Okay, so what I've got here, don't look. What I've got here is some quotes. Poor Richard's Almanac was a bunch of, so what it predicted was, and what it had in there was like weather patterns and stuff like that. So that's probably what you're thinking.
Way less exciting.
Well, people had to eat.
Than the sports. Yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, I get you.
They didn't have a lot of
time frame. So I need to put myself in Benjamin
Franklin.
Okay, that's
this
I
is not.
now.
Yes,
I
this is not
where we are.
This is not Dear Abby. Yeah, This is not Dear Abby. For those of you who don't know who Dear Abby is, you too young for me. Okay, so we're going to go back to some of the quotes. Poor Richard was Benjamin Franklin.
Yep.
He was by profession a
writer, maybe
printer.
Okay.
A printer, yep. So he had printing, and he did all the newspapers and stuff.
Yep.
Got the magazines
he
going.
Had a few pseudonames.
Yes, 100%.
As we get into the future, people start figuring out this was him.
Correct.
The whole time.
Correct.
Yeah, he had a few.
He was acting like he had writers, but he was just writing and printing and writing and printing, acting. Yes, okay. So here's a few quotes that were principles and statements from Poor Richard and the Almanac. 1735, look before or you'll find yourself, and what I want you to do is fill in the blank.
Okay.
From 1735, look before or you'll find yourself
sinking
behind.
Okay. Look before.
Look before. I
see where we're going.
Here we go.
That's on me.
Go.
I'm going to get the
All right,
next one.
1736, next year.
Yeah.
Don't throw blank at your neighbors if your own windows are blank. Don't throw
mud,
stones at your neighbors.
1738. I'm getting close.
1738. Okay.
Right, I'm getting close.
Don't throw stones at your neighbors if your own windows are
broken.
Glass.
I'm gonna get the next one.
1737, the next year.
Okay.
Well done is better than well.
This
well
is
done
a good one. Yeah.
is better than well.
Done is better than well not done. Well done.
Well not done.
Yeah, I don't know this one.
Well said.
Well
said.
That's a
Well
good
done.
One. These
are
gems.
That's what I'm saying.
These
he was
about
hitting.
To be in on my Instagram captions
He was hitting
for show.
He was hitting. Okay, here we go. 1745.
Okay.
No gains without. It rhymes. No gains without.
I mean, I don't want to say pain, but I know that's not it. So I'm going to go with no gains without. Don't know.
Pains.
Is it pains?
Yep.
Oh, man.
No gains
I
without
went
pains.
with my first
There you go.
intuition.
1740. No, I don't like that one. Give me. I got a few more.
So far, I'm just on all of these answers.
Yes.
I'm trying, though.
You got this one. 1748.
Yep.
When you're good to others, you're best to
yourself.
Yes. Well done, sir.
There we go.
Got it. Okay. 1748. Again, pardoning the bad is injuring the
good.
Yes. 2 for 2. 2 in a row. Okay. Haste makes
mistakes. Haste makes.
Even our producer is laughing across the hall.
Why would I know that one off of two words?
Because everyone says this. This is in every movie. It's in every. Your grandmother knows this. Your mom knows this. They all know it.
I've never heard this
Haste
before.
makes waste.
Haste makes waste.
Haste, we're hurrying.
I've never heard that before.
Moving too fast. You're too young for me.
I never heard that before. So I'm sorry.
Oh, you'll never. Okay, what is What is one of Biggie Smalls' best lines?
Money rules everything around me.
Okay, give me say it from. Give me some more lines from. Yes, it's a money thing.
Okay.
Yes, from some of his work.
Put me on the spot. Biggie. Money over everything. Isn't he money over everything?
I don't think he was that one.
He's not that one.
But your money. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know.
All right. It's my favorite song from Biggie Smalls.
Okay.
Mo Money Mo.
Mo Problems.
You know where he got it?
Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin. Here's Ben Franklin's quote. He who multiplies riches multiplies cares. That is straight from Ben Franklin.
Dropping dimes. If he
he was.
Could have put it in rhymes, he could have made a name for himself.
We could have, yeah, because everyone obviously forgot him.
Well, right.
Okay, so here's the thing, Jonah. All these things that we know Benjamin Franklin for, because he did make a name for himself, are not the things that this book talks about. There's an entire book written on something that basically everyone forgot, and one author and historian, Michael Meyer, went to the Harvard Library and found something.
So here's the thing. I know you're saying everyone forgot, and I'm interested to know if how many of you out there listening to our podcast actually do know. And the reason that I know is because it was announced like recently that this thing happened because of Benjamin Franklin.
Well, because the book came out. I think
the book just recently came out.
The book is only 2 years old.
I'm not reading. I hadn't read that one yet.
So I listened to it. I audiobooked it. And Jonah, here's what is going on here is Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers, is known for like 20 different things.
Yes, he is.
List them off.
Benjamin bifocals.
Yes,
is a big one. He's known for. I believe the kite.
The kite, right?
With the key
discovered
on it.
In quotes electricity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, he's known. I know that. Well, again, I guessed he was a writer because I knew that he had all these pseudonyms.
Printer, yes, printer. But he was a kind of a writer. Yes. There's 8,000 different pieces of correspondence that exist around him because he wrote so much letters to people, and they wrote him.
He was
8,000.
One of our founding fathers,
right?
And the reason for that is because he was instrumental in a lot of the formation of the country.
100%. He was older than all the founding fathers, so he was really old, and he kind of died earlier than a lot of them. I believe
he invented or discovered a urinary catheter also.
It's because we put it on the screen up here? Yeah, the old urinary catheter.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
If you didn't know, now you know.
If you don't know, now you know.
Or maybe Ben Franklin.
Maybe Ben Franklin, right? Time. He was out here just busting rhymes. Okay, so, I saw a great quote. It was the bust of rhymes. It was the worst of rhymes. Recently. Okay, so Benjamin Franklin also was the only person who signed the Declaration of Independence, and the 3 documents, and one of them you'll never get. But it ended the American Revolutionary War. The treaty that ended the American Revolutionary War. So now the rest of the world recognizes the United States as an independent country from Great Britain.
Yep.
What was that document?
I don't know. The Treaty of something.
Treaty of Paris.
Yeah.
And the Constitution. He signed all 3.
Okay.
Only person to sign all 3. So here's what's crazy. Jonah, tell the people what you know, because obviously we put the notes together. What is that big thing that none of us knew until recently?
Yeah.
That has something to do with all this money making that we're normally talking about here at the Cash Compound, our headquarters, where the banking bros teach people code cracking cash flow. What is that one thing that Benjamin Franklin made a bet on, and now we're discovering we need to talk about this, man?
Yeah, so I won't spoil it for everyone out there, but I will tell you this. What I saw recently posted was that two cities, city of Philadelphia, which makes sense, city of Boston, which makes sense. We're going back to 1738, right? But these 2 cities just got a big check on behalf of Benjamin Franklin. And so that goes to say 2 things. One was we got to talk about what he did in his last will and testament.
There we go.
And 2, we got to talk about how in the world did Ben Franklin, this is 200 years ago now, almost, right?
Yeah, no, more than 200. This happened about 25 years ago.
Well, when did he pass away?
Yeah, he passed away off the top of my head, 1790.
That's what I'm saying. So
yeah,
it's
so
now,
1990.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So this is 200 plus years ago.
Yes.
And less than a few years ago, so less than 20 years ago, it seems like, these two cities got checks.
1990. That's what I'm saying. This is not. It's more than a few years ago. The book came out.
Yes, but I'm saying.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, but I'm saying 200 years. This man died 200 years ago.
Relatively.
And 200 years later, these two cities get checks.
Yes.
And so we got to figure out what he did.
Yes, he did.
Of course, that leads us to really two thoughts. Was it last will and testament? Was it life insurance? Was it a combination of both? How did he do this? And what did he do?
Yeah, that's the question. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously you can get the full story, 20 hours or something. I got to go back through the book, but I audio booked this thing. Benjamin Franklin's last bet was that in his last will and testament, he left these two cities a ton of money, a literal ton. Yep. So at that time, 1787, when he left, he obviously left before he died, 1790. Whenever he wrote the last version of this bad boy, left him a ton of money. And by a ton, how many is a ton?
2,000 pounds.
Right. So 1,000 to one city and 1,000 to the other city. Yep. So a ton of money. Okay. These are pounds at the time. So the American dollar ain't in circulation. Who knows? That's a different podcast. And he made a bet that that's the name of the idea. What he did was he put in his will that he's going to leave them this money if the city council was going to vote on, hey, we'll keep this money, but if you vote on it, you have to do what the will said. The will becomes law.
Yep.
And what he put in there was, this is a pool of money that you should put in the bank for interest.
Yep.
And you should send out loans to tradesmen. Like me, I'm a printer. He said the working man who works with his hands in these two great cities, the city that birthed him and the city that raised him, I'm going to leave you guys this money, and I want this money to be used for people's businesses. You send them out microloans, basically. It's like the beginning of a microloan.
Yep.
They pay you back over the course of 10 years, and you're not allowed to do anything else with this money other than give it to tradesmen, have it come back, and then you can have a disbursement 100 years from now, and then you can get rid of this idea in 200 years, in 1990.
Yep.
100 years from now, do something that the city votes on that is good for everybody, and then in 1990, do the same thing, but then you're done. Yep. You don't have to do it anymore. That is a wild foresight.
It's clutch, actually. Real big for those cities. I mean, think about it. And so the crazy part about this, of course, is when we're getting the story, 2020, I saw it for the first time this year, so 2025.
Okay. Yep.
What I saw is city of Philadelphia, city of Boston take over $6 or $7 million out of this fund now.
Yeah.
That Ben Franklin originally left and designated.
So what's really crazy about that is obviously the sum total, but when you get into the back and forth. Yep. So what this author does is he starts going back and forth and comparing what happened, because basically
between the two cities.
Yes, basically Benjamin Franklin was against. You ready for this? He was against public officials being paid salaries.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you did things on behalf of the community in an elected environment, you should not be paid. So the founders of our country mostly said, no, that's bogus. We getting paid.
Right.
And obviously they're really good at voting themselves into, from a federal level, they're really good at voting themselves into raises now and stuff like that. But he had to have managers from the city work these loans and work this ledger for free and be able to rent it out to tradesmen and all sorts of interesting people, some of which are family members or names you've heard of, like Paul Revere's son-in-law got like the second loan in Boston, or, all sorts of things. Because, I mean, obviously these towns were smaller back then and things like that. But what's really crazy about this to me is having the audacity to think that this new country was going to be around in 200 years. That's a big deal. Because this republic, as
If you're one of the only people to sign the Treaty of Paris, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence, you already put your bets on this country.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But see, many of these founding fathers and signers of the Declaration of Independence got their house burned down, their kids stolen.
They sure did.
Yeah, but Benjamin, he made it through. Of course, he spent many years in France as opposed to the U.S. But so here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this idea, as I'm going through this book, very much parallels with rule number 1 from Nelson Nash in the infinite banking concept. Of course, this man was the developer of the idea that the common man on a ground level should be in charge of his own financing tools using whole life insurance. And I'm seeing so many parallels with what Ben Franklin put forth for these 2 cities and what infinite banking really is all about.
That's like he's got to be, I mean, going back, I'm not sure that we're going to say he's going to be first, right? But he is a great example of thinking long range, rule number 1 from Nelson, but also this lasting legacy idea, right? He killed the lasting legacy idea. He did such a great job. One, we still all know his name. He's obviously got his face printed on, made such an impact to our country. He's got his face printed on one of our dollars, right? Real big, prominent dollar too. They didn't try to put him on a coin or something that we took out of circulation. Then secondly, we're talking, I mean, it is 2025. We've got an entire podcast episode dedicated to look what he did and how he thought and what he impacted and how he impacted cities way back when, right? And you've got to think that these cities also, these are not small cities. These are prominent cities.
Oh, and now Philadelphia was the nation's capital, right, at the time. Yeah, big deal. Boston started amalgamating all the surrounding villages, and now it's got the whole thing going on at this point. And I forgot to say that these 2 cities had very different approaches over the course of 200 years of stewardship of this money and how they used it. So Benjamin Franklin put in his will how much money should be there in 100 years.
Oh.
How much money should be there in 200.
That's interesting.
And they weren't even close. They weren't even close.
Huh.
They were well below because they did not manage it. There were periods of time where nothing happened. Like nobody managed this money, and it sat around for 20 years before someone stepped back in. And it's still that much money. Yeah, and it's still that much money later, right? Obviously, any of us would. A $6.5 million gift to your city when you die, or if you die today, is Greenville, South Carolina, getting 6.5?
They are not.
All right. Would you leave them 6 point anything?
If I had it.
That's an interesting play. But he loved his cities. He loved this country. And he thought that, I can find it. I can look it up here. But over the course of time, they were doing very different things with the money. And then they started voting on, well, hey, should it just be tradesmen? Just be men?
Yep.
And
new things come up. Should we do it for educational things?
Correct. All that came up. Hospitals, like what about a fellowship at this particular hospital?
Yep.
Another thing interesting that you said is, yes, we know who it is, Benjamin Franklin. He is known for 5 or 10 different things, but he was against putting his name on stuff.
He was. That's why he used all the pseudonyms.
Yeah, he didn't like putting his name on stuff, and he was a big source of crowdfunding for the projects. He said the word projects like crazy in his book, in his writings, in his will. He said projects, and he loved the idea of getting other people involved. And maybe that's why he sent out money to tradesmen all over town. Other people he thought that was a big deal.
Yep.
And nowadays, you're going to have to name that building or that endowment after people. They are not going to give you the money.
Yeah.
He did not prefer that approach.
It's also interesting because you've got to assume if he left these 2 cities a ton of money, literally, right? Half of it to this city, the other half to this city. You've got to assume that he also, I mean, it's a little different than today, right? It's not saying give $6.5 million to your city. It's saying, listen, I'm going to give you whatever, 1 million, 100,000, whatever it is, and say, here are the rules and regulations for doing this and growing it over the next XYZ. I believe in my little town, city so much, right? That here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I support it. And so his legacy also impacted many people, but it's like a direct relation to what he was doing while he was alive. It's not like it was out of the ordinary for people.
That's true. Because, of course, the University of Pennsylvania, founded by him.
Yep.
He's got other foundations and endowments and all these things that he was doing, public spaces and places and stuff. He just loved, I mean, this man was just a man of the city.
Yep.
And so you're exactly right. His money was an extension of what he was and who he was and what he was doing when he was alive.
Right.
He was a man, before his time, obviously, 200 years, but he was also a man of his time. Inside his publications, I mean, he printed slave auctions. He printed about runaway slaves, bring them back and stuff like that. He had servants. He called them servants. Took some overseas with him to France and things like that, which you're treated way better in every other country except the U.S.
Sure.
But he was a man before and of his time, as you could say. Yeah, very interesting. So here's the question for you, Jonah. Where do we go from here? And how does this specifically parallel with the infinite banking concept? When you see this long-term vision idea that you said, when you see philanthropy for other people, how do you envision the infinite banking concept and what Benjamin Franklin was doing in his last gift kind of parallel specifically?
Really, it's the thinking long range, right? It's Nelson Nash's first rule, like you said, think long range. Benjamin Franklin obviously thought long range, and we can go back to some of the first things that we did that we recognize him for, signing those documents, right? Before he starts writing on all these other publications, before he does a couple of his inventions or discovers a few things, before he leaves the money, he obviously was a person who thought about the future. It's not all about what happens today. You don't you don't start and found a university if you're not thinking about the kids who are going to attend the university or the people who are going to attend the university and thinking about the future. You're saying, I want to make this community, this place that I live, a better place. And so I'm going to bring education here so we can train people up, so we can accomplish more, so we can do more together, so we can be smarter or whatever it is. So this is obviously the person who thought about that. And really, that's what we're tasked to do when we're thinking through the infinite banking concept. That's what we're tasked to do, think long range. Now, it's a little bit helpful that the infinite banking concept is designed inside of whole life insurance products,
right?
Because life insurance makes you think about the future at least a little bit. At some point in your process of learning the infinite banking concept, you're going to think to yourself, oh, there is death benefit associated with this policy I'm about to get. Who should I give that death benefit to? Am I giving it to the spouse or to the kids or to the parents or whoever, right? To the church, to the charity. And so as you have that assigned inside of your infinite banking policy, it starts to build that need to think a little bit more long range, just a little bit. As you get more in depth into the infinite banking concept and you start realizing that, hey, I've got cash value that I could use now. I've got guaranteed cash values that I'm going to have later.
Right.
I've got the ability to do withdrawals if I wanted to down the road. I've got the ability to supplement or fund retirement down the road. And I'm still going to have, right? You start thinking a little bit more strategically into the future. Well, I want to do X, Y, and Z with my policy. Or maybe I want to start policies on my kids so I can do X, Y, and Z with my kids' policies. So that way when I pass away and my policy pays all the money back to my kids because they're my beneficiaries,
right,
they have somewhere to put it or do this with it or do that with it. So it starts you thinking long range, but Benjamin Franklin even thought longer than that, right? It wasn't just about when my life ends and what happens to my family. He thought about the country that he lived in, the cities that he lived in. And I think that's cool.
In the book, they discuss the fact that misappropriation of the funds or mismanagement, because it wasn't being managed from time to time, that several of Benjamin's posterity tried to sue the cities and say, like, we need the money back because you guys aren't using it well. That's an interesting thing. Now, one more thing about the parallels between this man's foresight of the future, his love for his city, and the infinite banking concept. What about the idea of these microloans for people to stay in business or to get into business.
Yep.
How do you think that the infinite banking concept and his idea of you need to be using this money, it's not a gift for 100 and 200 years from now, it's also an ability to fund city projects with the tradesmen all the time. You need to be doing that.
I think it's really two things when I think through that. One is the need and the ability because you have to use money to accomplish things. So if you have to, I have to use money to accomplish things. Right now, it's 2025. I currently do live in a home. I currently do drive a car. But guess what? My house and my car aren't going to be around forever. I'm probably going to need a new one at some point. In order to make money, I need to go influence the world. I need to be an influence to my community and space in order to make money, right? Things can't just sit still and make money. We talk about that sometimes when we do live presentations teaching people the infinite banking concept. How much money did your local car dealership make if no cars move off the lot? How much money did your local grocery store make if no groceries move off the shelves? You've got to move these things in order to make money. And so I love the idea of, hey, not only do I know that, but I want to make sure that I'm instilling this idea inside of the city council, the state, whatever it is, so you guys realize you have to move the money. Don't forget that. Don't forget you've got to move it. And I think that's really cool. Not only that, if you do have to move money in order to make more, it's this idea of being the bank, the same as the infinite banking concept.
Right.
Hey, if people have to move money to make more, if they need the money to start their businesses, if they need the money to make the purchases, we should give it to them. Because that means they're going to have to give it back to us with interest if we get our paperwork right and we set the terms right. And I love that idea because that's what the infinite banking concept's all about. Having money sit still does not help you, right? Having money move is what helps you. And that means the more you can move it, the more you make. And so this gift from Benjamin Franklin to say, here's now more money that you can go move, but you have to move it in order to have anything, in order to keep it, I love that. I mean, that's just, it's the entire idea behind the infinite banking concept.
Well, yeah, and outside of whole life insurance, the product which works best for infinite banking, we can say that Benjamin Franklin was practicing infinite banking from the grave.
He sure was.
He was going to have a legacy gift at the centennial and the bicentennial of his death, but he was also funding these projects and these people's businesses throughout those 200 years. Isn't that the infinite banking concept?
Yep.
Wild, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great book. Michael Meyer, go find it, check it out, buy it. It is called Benjamin Franklin's Last Bet, and be amazed at how this structure of what he did with his legacy gift and your opportunity to get started with this idea with IBC is sitting right there in front of you. You've got a model from one of our founding fathers. Most of us love and revere what this man was up to and doing. So why don't you try to leave that type of lasting legacy for your posterity 200 years from now? Jonah, we've got somebody who subscribed to us recently on the YouTube channel who is looking to make a lasting legacy. Who is it?
That's right. So shout out to Philip Motori. Hopefully I said the last name right. There, Philip, we really appreciate you, man. Like we said, he is a recent YouTube subscriber. And so last I checked, when you subscribe, you can also hit that bell. And that bell allows you to be notified when we put out new videos. I think we've got at least 2 or 3 coming out this week. Most of the time, every week, we've got 2 or 3 coming out where we talk through, walk through, introduce, explain, dive deep on the infinite banking concept. We not only show examples like we're doing in this episode of past great American people and founding fathers who indirectly practiced the infinite banking concept, did all of the attributes of what infinite banking concept offers through his last will and testament and through the cities. But sometimes we give you like those curated examples, and we'll dive deep on today's world and using the infinite banking concept. So, Philip, if you're out there and you're listening or watching, thank you so much for being a subscriber. Drop us a comment or a question, and we'll be more than happy to come back to you and answer those things. But we really appreciate you, man.
Gave a lot of game, we never got a lot of things. Bow your head and say the prayer. We taught you how to be the bank.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Banking Bros podcast, you'll love our homemade cookie. Well, you'll just love everything else that we do. So go ahead and keep listening. Move on to the next episode where we talk about how we can utilize this type of process and product in a culturally ethnic environment and what was going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma back in the 1920s. We'll talk to you soon.